Hello and welcome to the STCfit podcast. I'll be your host today. My name's Nat Jurek, and with me I'll be joined by Ben Scott and Jason Galea. STCfit are a group of coaches who provide premium coaching and education services to high-achieving women who want to ditch the frustration and achieve the results they want when they want. On the podcast, we'll be discussing all things related to our 5-step method to experiencing total clarity in knowing how to achieve your goals, present and future. The podcast is brought to you by STCfit for all your online and personal training needs. If you enjoyed today's episode, please give us a share and tag at Nat Jurek STCfit, at Ben Scott STC, and at Jason Galea _STC. Hope you enjoy the show.
What's up? How you doing?
Good. I feel like it's so weird because we don't get the little update that it's recording now. So I'm like, Hey, so you can start talking now.
Very happy they fixed that, to be honest.
Yeah, we get like the little introduction. What's up? How's lockdown life treating you this week?
And like there's a glimmer of hope that, we might be out playing golf.
I thought you could now.
Nah. It's like as of Sunday, this coming Sunday, there's a few whispers that it's still kind of predicated on that we will get to these 80% single backs numbers. I don't know. Like I was able to book around with one other person. So like what we did is we just booked 4 of us, but just 2 tee times back to back. So technically we're still, playing one with another person, but the other boys are behind us. So
I feel like it's the most isolated sport. It would be frustrating because you're like, I don't fucking stand next to anyone anyway.
We've been complaining about this the whole time. It's like, it's literally I can go to a playground and share a swing or a slide or, a basketball ring or something, but I can't go and play golf with my own clubs that no one touches. And you don't stand next to your friends.
Yeah, and of course, it's like people so far away from you.
We're horrible golfers too. So one of us is on the left of the fairway, the one's on the right. Like we're completely, as far, we're like, if we talk, we're just screaming at each other from where we are, usually hanging shit on how bad our shots are. So yeah, so it's like it's kind of like Christmas week, my mates have sent me pictures of their clubs at the front door, and they're like, oh, we give my clubs the biggest clean this weekend. I'm like, I'm actually going to do that myself as well. So yeah, it's just finally have something to look forward to, which is good. So yeah, that's, other than that, it's just Groundhog Day, to be honest.
Silver lining.
I need this so bad. I need to be able to get outside and just see people.
Literally 6 weeks. Countdown is on.
Because you're not you're not introvert like half of the rest of the team. They're just this is how I live life. I'm like, fuck, man.
I'm fucking dying.
Yeah. It's I don't mind my own time, and there's certainly times where I'm just I need to stay the fuck away from people, but it's not a prolonged period of time in my week or my life. It's just a very acute time. I'm like, all right, I need to go out. I need to see people. I need to get amongst. I want to
choose when that happens. I want to choose when I don't hang out with people.
Yeah, that's it.
Person for me.
Yeah, so I'm struggling hard. And I know you would be too. It's just man, once we're open, it's just every night of the week that I can be out, I'm going to be out.
I remember last year, I was thinking about it before. I was like, last year, as soon as we got out, I swear to God, I just didn't come home for 3 months.
Yeah. Even that weekend that we were open, it's I was out Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, kind of felt bad. And then now I'm kind of glad I did that. So
yeah, the cycle continues.
Definitely.
Thank you. Well, today we are talking about nutrition. So we've actually had a lot of interest in this topic. I don't think we've done a nutrition episode between the 3 of us yet. So it's been kind of requested, a lot of conversations I think that are going to be really helpful for you guys. So finally we can put this out to you. So when we talk about nutrition, we're not necessarily talking about dieting specific. I think a lot of people go straight into how do I diet, or what's the best diet, or how do I do fat loss. So there's a few steps that we kind of need to understand before that, and we kind of take the approach of understanding fundamentals of nutrition, principles of the diet, understanding diet types and how this mechanistically happens, so that then we can apply it for an individual based off like the goals that they're working towards. So I guess like the biggest question that we get is like, you know, what's the best diet? It's like, how do I do this? Like, how do I eat? What do I do? What's going to get me a result? And like, we kind of just like define that as the one that you can follow that's going to allow you to build or attain muscle mass and like allow you to get the goal that you want to achieve. And I think that when we look at it from a broader perspective, then we understand all the fundamentals that go into putting together a diet. It's like quite simple. Like if you can do both of those things, there's no real right or wrong or best approach that, you know, we're taking. And we spoke about this in Be Bulletproof over the last like 3 or so weeks. It's also really insightful for the guys I know.
Yeah. The thing with nutrition is like, once you kind of know the nuts and bolts of it, it's nowhere near as complicated as people have, like, it's nowhere near as complicated as people's perspective of it now or before that. So like, it's a very, very simple thing. And it allows you to get freedom back, and it relieves anxiety. It gives you flexibility. You know, when you take the time to, put your effort and attention into just learning, like literally just fundamentals. You don't have to like go and do a diploma of nutrition or become a nutrition coach or anything like that. It's like literally just need to understand, like, you know, why is it important for us to eat? What does, nourishment involve? And, how can I make this nourishment work for the goals that I have? Because that's going to be a little bit different too. And it's like, okay, what's made up of nourishment in terms of, macronutrients, vitamins, minerals, antioxidants, those kind of things. Don't need to know what they are individually, just need to know that they're important, for us to eat for whatever reasons. And then it's like, when I'm doing fat loss, I need to do this. And when I'm doing a high growth phase, I would more want to skew my diet towards this stuff. And how I manage that day to day is going to be, a preference for me and my schedule and those kind of things. And if it falls under these 6 or 7 kind of areas, then, we're ticking all the boxes. And then we just have to kind of make it fit for the lifestyle too. It's like, can we have some flexibility? Can we have a social life? Can we kind of incorporate, food and our social life together? Sometimes, yes, you can. If your goals are quite serious and extreme for a certain period of time, that might not be able to be the case, but it's only going to be an acute period. If it's really important to you, you'll make that decision and prioritize.
Yeah, it's funny that you say like it's so simple. I think it's one of the things that people overcomplicate because they have this false interpretation that like it is super complicated. And like the fact that it's so simple is probably the reason that we don't talk about it all too often. Like we're kind of just like, this is what you do, this is how you do it. Like there's not much more to it. And I think people are often like, like,
is that it?
Is that all? Is that all I need to do? And like I had a client even yesterday just say like, I completely trust you, but it's so hard to believe that it's just that simple. Like based on everything else that I hear, and obviously there's like so much shit out there, people are just like, this can't be it because it's so easy. Like it doesn't, I don't believe you. Like,
it's so crazy that we don't get taught a lot about food. When you think about it, it's like you've got energy, oxygen, and water, which are like the 3 components to life. We go without food for like 14 days. We can go without water for maybe 5 to 7, and then we can go without oxygen, I think, for up to 60 seconds or maybe 2 minutes. And then all 3 of those lead to the same fate, which is, we're gone. But for some reason, like we don't really get like education about it in school and stuff. And we take for granted that, when we eat, we just eat because we're hungry, and it doesn't matter what we eat. We're hungry, we just eat and we're done. Now we can take that approach, but it's going to be very difficult for someone to be able to kind of achieve the goals that they want in the gym and manage their body composition and stuff, especially in the society we have now where like food is just so readily available, and hyper palatable food is readily available. Like it's a $1 billion industry now, hyper palatable food that's fast. So it's like we kind of got ourselves into a little bit of a situation now as a society that we need to really be conscious of our food, and we really need to be conscious of like the fundamentals of nutrition, because our environment is just swayed towards overconsumption of energy through these like really dense, energy dense, hyper palatable foods. And like, let's be honest, like we're not nowhere near as active as a society as well. Like, everything's quite tech-based, automated, those kind of things. We have to now be conscious of activity in that. And so when we talk about these fundamental kind of mechanisms to body composition of like energy balance, it's like we're really trying to balance the energy coming in the system and coming out. And when it comes to weight gain, we obviously want to be, expending less energy than we, are moving or burning through the system. And then the opposite when we're, trying to lose body fat. So, there's a lot of, there's complexity to the situation. But then it's like teaching people how to fix the situation is not a hard fix, providing we give them the necessary education and buy-in. Like, it's just got to try it. So you gotta be willing to try something new. Like your client that's put trust in you to get the job done, and irrespective of the complexity of it. From a coach's perspective, if it's simple, it's good. It's like the likelihood of you following this is really high. You guys just need to have that foundation of trust and be like, well, just try it out and see what happens. And it's 99% of the time it's going to work. 100% of the time it's going to work. For us, it's like we've just had so much success with it. It's like you can put your house on. It's like if you follow this, you'll either get the results, and if you don't, we have the best information of why you won't, and you'll get it in the future.
I think that's like probably the most important part as well. It's like none of this is guesswork. It's like all really measured, and we, if things aren't working, like there's a way around it. It's not just like pulling strings and like hoping for the best. So I guess like with the problems that the misinformation sort of leads to, and the common problems that we see with the women that we work with, is almost like this idea that healthy equals low calorie equals healthy, and that we need to really be conscious of what we're eating, just in terms of like calories as a way of like managing health. So it's just this misinterpretation that like if we're eating less food, or if we're eating healthy food, that means less food, and that's going to be good for us. So there's just like a failure to understand the fundamentals of nutrition and individual energy balance and your requirements, and almost just like eating like a model, not an athlete. Like we want to perform well, we want to train hard, we want to get results in the gym, we want to look a certain way, but we're not eating in a way to support that. So these two things just go completely against each other. And it's just like butting your head against a brick wall, because it's like we physically can't achieve that result if we're following that sort of mentality around our nutrition, that just like less is always going to be better.
Performance is your highest virtue. So the people that are going to listen to this podcast, like, and they train, they're going to do a lot of resistance training. They're going to be heavily invested in their body composition and strength. So to achieve those outcomes, we have to be, doing intense exercise. There's going to be a lot of muscle damage from the training that we do, because that's just a byproduct of resistance training. Can't avoid it. And then, some of them, they're going to want to build, muscle. They're going to want to build their glutes. They're going to build their shoulders. They want to build their backs, and that requires, things like protein in a sufficient amount, which is going to be more than the average population. It's going to be more calories and more carbohydrates, because they're more active and they want to be supporting, this energy demand during training and recovery after, and then even just supporting energy supply of, without getting too nerdy, we'll put one sleeve in the lab coat today, supporting the performance of like, fast twitch muscle fibers, which are strong and forcefully contracting, which essentially run off glucose. So we want to have more carbohydrates in the diet to support the strength and power that these muscle fibers can do for us during training, which are really the ones that are going to be the more responsive to growth and stuff than, other muscle fiber types that are like, hybrid and slow twitch. So there's a lot to it, but we always want to kind of frame things from the coach and the client perspective around performance. It's like, if you guys can train to the maximum of your potential, learn how to train hard, and obviously we facilitate that through training and recover, like, you don't have to eat as little as like you really think, and you don't have to be on the ice block supermodel diet that, essentially starves yourself to a body. Like, if you look at someone who starves themselves to, a physique, and someone who works hard and trains accordingly to build a physique, it's like they're two really different kind of looking outcomes. And most of the people, if you actually sit there and say, well, in 12 months time, what do you want to look like? It's the it's the influencers that are, they're strong, they're muscly, they're toned, they're not essentially, bodybuilders, but they're fit. You can tell that they work hard. They're not people that are like, I've had like 800 calories today and I did like a booty band workout, and they're going to look that way. They're going to look the way they kind of behave. So we've got to make sure we kind of scale the nutrition accordingly to the outcome. And for a lot of people, especially for the female population, it's going to be eating a lot more and, not thinking about, because the problem there is like, most people don't think about the activity they do. They only think about the intake that goes in. So they don't understand that the intake that comes in is going to be a huge influencer on the output, but no one's conscious of the output. It's like you train hard, you're just like, cool, that's expected of me. But when it comes to building a physique, it's like the training hard is the thing. Like that's what we're after, So yeah.
Yeah, even like we did this, well, you and Ben, because I was on my deathbed, did the seminar on like phasing the diet. And I think the biggest thing that people can take away from that is that it's not the diet doesn't necessarily mean deficit or fat loss. It's like, how does this play out over a longer time span? And how do we have phases of, yes, eating less, intentionally eating more, maybe eating just a baseline amount that all kind of contributes to you looking better in like a year's time, rather than just like running on this hamster wheel, just eating fuck all for like the next 6 months.
Yeah. And that's because most people think their diets are a lifestyle, like they're something that they have to commit to and they can't deviate from. And that's not the case. It's like you eat based off your acute goal, and you can transition to a different eating style if your goals and preferences permit it. So you don't have to bound yourself to, you don't have to bind an identity to a diet. Like you just have to sensibly diet, which is whatever's necessary for the situation and your capabilities and your goals. And you just like do what you can, transition accordingly. And that way you don't get kind of bogged down and stuck into this like mindset where it's like, you have to just, eat low carb and you have to just eat, paleo, or you just have to eat this. So you can kind of move with your preferences and situation. And you also move with research and data, because, what we know now about training and nutrition in 10 to 20 years time is probably going to be redundant. Like, sure, there's going to be some constants, because there's been some constants that have lasted the tail of time up to this point, like 30, 40, 50, 60 years. But there's certainly some things that have kind of come and gone, like things like you're talking about insulin for weight loss and using branched chain amino acids for muscle gain and whatnot. It's like these things have become redundant to the point where it's like, if you practice that stuff now, you're actually someone who hasn't come with the times and with the data and research. So, we need to make sure that we don't get too bogged down and biased towards a certain style of nutrition, because at some point, like, that could totally be made redundant. And even though it got you results, it's probably at a cost of something that you didn't have to pay, which if you go with the time and with the research, you might be able to do things a little bit easier, with a little bit more flexibility that incorporates, other facets of health too, because people miss the interpretation of health. It's like, no one really understands what healthy means. And it's like a state of health, like, is, complete physical, mental, social well-being, and the absence of disease, really. So it's like there's other things involved in health, and like energy requirements is something that makes someone healthy. Where you get that energy from, like, in some instances, doesn't matter. Just because something has like an abundance of vitamins and minerals and whatnot doesn't make it anything healthier than something else that's just energy dense. It's like, depends on the purpose, depends on the situation. Someone wants to eat out with their friends, it's like, is that not healthy? Because that's adhering to or working on someone's social health. Like you and I right now, really fucking struggling in the social health department. And it's like, I don't know about you, but it's like, all I want to do is go out for a meal with the boys. Like, I just want to play golf, and I want to go out and sit at the pub and eat a steak while they drink about 12 beers, and I just watch them do that. It's like, that's what I want to do, So we lose this interpretation of like what health is and what healthy foods are, and we're biased towards a certain view of health and what is a good diet, and that's usually 9 times out of 10 the problem. Because all we need to do then is look back and go, right, well, I have a nourishment requirement for like growth and development, and just to like kind of make sure my body's getting everything it needs to work. Now, then on top of that, I have an energy requirement too. So the nourishment requirement still has an energy amount that comes with it because I have to eat food and most foods have calories. But then I have an energy demand. And that energy demand for the people that watch this podcast is going to be far greater than the people that don't listen to this podcast and don't train. And they're the average person, which is usually a sedentary individual. So the energy demand still is part of the health requirements because you move a lot. So we need to look at it just through this different lens of like you're hyperactive and you've got to meet all these elements of health to be a healthy person.
Yeah. So in terms of a starting point for someone who is listening to this podcast, they don't have a very solid understanding of like just fundamentals of nutrition, principles of the diet. Where do you start? Like, obviously there's a lot of information out there. So where's your starting point for someone who is just like, where do I go?
I think the first place to start is just understanding why we eat. So understanding like what food does for us. It's like food supports energy. Like most foods that we eat share a very similar fate. They get broken down and used for energy supply for the body. Then there's other foods that don't do that. So we need to understand that it's important to have things like protein because that doesn't have the fate of energy supply in most circumstances. It's a very rare case where someone would have protein used for energy supply. And protein serves growth and development, and repair and those kind of things. So everybody has proteins in their body and everyone experiences some form of breakdown of protein because we have this protein balance. So they would need to have protein too. It's not just for a meathead like me who wants to be a big, jacked bodybuilder.
Say powerlifter?
Oh, talk about powerlifting so much, I nearly said it. So then it's like we've got carbs and fats and they serve purposes too. They're both used for energy supply, but they also serve for other things in the body as well. So if we can get this understanding of like, okay, cool. So our body's like a communicative system that runs on supply of food. We need to make sure that we have a certain amount of food and then looking at things like fiber as well, not necessarily for energy supply, but supports things, roundaboutish way that, affect our food choices, affect our digestion, affect our health overall. So it's like, we know what those 3 macros and fiber do and serve for us. It's like, we now have a better understanding of like why we need to eat and the choices that we could make in the diet. After that, it's understanding the energy demands of a human. So it's like we have different energy demands. You and I have different energy demands. We're a bit different in size, different in biological sex and hormone makeup. We're different in terms of our activity levels. And we're also different in our goals potentially. So all of those things will influence the amount of energy that we both expend, just naturally from moving and our own, physical makeup. And obviously the amount of activity that we do in it every day, which is obviously heavily impeded right now because we both, I don't know about you, but this chair has a fucking ass groove in it. Like I sit in it that much at the moment.
Yeah, I was just going to say, like, I think like obviously understanding your individual energy requirements, but then also understanding like that changes too. Like just because it was X amount 3 months ago, like that's not that forever. Like,
yeah, it's a moving target.
Yeah, exactly. Like you said, like I'm eating a hell of a lot less right now because I'm moving a hell of a lot less and fucking stuff. Yeah. What do you do?
Yeah, definitely. So if we understand that, we now have this like knowledge of why we need to eat and this knowledge of like energy coming in the system and energy going out of the system. And then the people need to understand the ramifications of the energy going in and the energy going out. So that's what we talk about it a lot and we're always going to talk about it. It's like energy balance is an important concept to understand. If we eat too much, if calories are higher coming in the system than they are expending coming out, we're going to gain weight. It's not a bad thing. We have intentional phases where that needs to happen. Like, if we want to grow, we need to understand, why and what else we're doing in terms of behaviors like training. But in a lot of cases, if people aren't aware of that, it's like, that's why you're getting, you're overweight. It's like in 9 times out of 10, it's like you're overweight because you eat too much and you don't burn enough, or you're over fat because of that. So your body's storing body fat that is converted from excess energy supply in the diet just for usage later on. It's an amazing mechanism that we have. It's one of the greatest survival mechanisms that we've got because it knows that it can run off this stored body fat if the food supply runs out. And that's how you guys lose body fat. So then we know then we understand if the energy coming in the system and the energy coming out, so what you're eating and drinking in terms of calories meets the demands of activity, which is day-to-day activity and training, the body mass is going to stay the same. And then if obviously the more favorable thing that we talk about, the most favorable goal that people want is weight loss, fat loss occurs when, in most cases, when we expend more energy than we consume, through the diet. So then we understand these relationships. It's like, okay, well, this individual energy demand is this, or this person's energy requirements are this. So then to create a deficit to drive fat loss, I need to do this. I need to reduce it this much. To increase, to create growth, I want to do it this much. That's kind of the first place I would kind of start.
Yeah. When we understand that, I think we solve a lot of the other problems that come along with managing nutrition, because it's we know what this person needs and we can reverse engineer everything off that, and it kind of makes sense. It's reasonable. It just means that we're not doing dumb shit or shake diets or whatever you found on the internet that you've deemed as the golden ticket because it worked for you. It's what were the trade-offs to that, and how can we now do that in a much more intelligent way because it's suitable for you as an individual and you're meeting yourself halfway with what you actually need.
Yeah, agreed. I guess from there, if we're looking at this as steps, we would then need to understand macronutrient distribution. So macronutrient distribution is you've got your whole calories. Just think of your whole calories like a pie chart, like a big circle. And then your macronutrient distribution would be the three main components of that would be protein, carbs, and fats. And the pie chart would work how much of that pie chart's taken up by carbs, fats, and proteins is based on your goals and your personal preferences. So protein allocation would differ from depending on the goal. So generally, we don't need as much protein when we're trying to grow because we've got an excess amount of calories, and we usually get larger amounts of carbohydrates, and both of those situations spare muscle breakdown. So we can eat a little bit less. And then we would have an amount of fat that's preferable to the person. And the rest of it would be carbohydrates. And in most cases, the people that are doing that are trying to grow and they're training hard. Their training volumes are high. They're expending a lot of energy. They're an overactive individual. So we need to support that with a great supply of energy or substrate that's going to break down to energy efficiently. And that's going to be carbohydrates that do that. When we go into a phase of fat loss or something like that, where we're trying to kind of lose weight, lose body fat, it's advisable that we increase the protein slightly. Now we can do that for two different reasons. There's a theory that when we're in a catabolic state, which is breaking body fat down, there's potential to break muscle tissue down too. So we need to have a little bit more protein. There's a little bit of research coming out now that's still early stuff, saying that could be a little debunked, but there's just not enough information right now to just go and blanketly say, let's change our minds on that totally. But see, like I said before, it's we need to take that into consideration now. And the more stuff that comes out, we need to move with the times if that's the case. But it's just kind of a little flag that's popped up at the moment. But there's another reason why we could increase protein intake is because it takes about 30% of the energy of the protein to break it down to digest it. So you could increase the protein by just giving people more food. But you're also kind of creating a little bit of an energy deficit as well because your body's kind of breaking that down and it's very taxing to do so. So you can kind of use it for two different things. And then if you're a high performing individual who's trained, there's some really good evidence that you can achieve a little bit of muscle gain with an excess amount of protein, even in a deficit, in a surplus even as well. So it's how trained this individual is. It's if they're a beginner, if they're even beginner to intermediate, even in a deficit, they might, achieve some form of body recomposition as well during this period if we provide a certain amount of protein in the diet. So these things can potentially happen. So we would need to make sure that we kind of have this distribution right. After that, it's understanding that, food quality still needs to be considered. Micronutrients and stuff are still something that we should really be trying to, get in the diet. And that's part of that nourishment component that we talked about. So it's looking at foods where we need to get a wide variety of vitamins, minerals, antioxidants, those kind of things. If you guys want to kind of get a little bit more of an understanding of where your own individual requirements would be, we've got an article on assessing your diet. So I can't remember the name of that one.
More than macros.
More than macros. Yeah, that's the one. So more than macros, navigate your way to our website, go to articles, get yourselves into that article, give you a step-by-step process on how to do that.
And what's it called?
A chronometer.
That's right. Yeah.
So we can use chronometer or something like that. You can put your foods in and you can kind of just assess where you sit, like where you sit with your electrolytes, where you sit with your minerals, where you sit with, your vitamins and all those kind of things. And what you essentially want to do is try and meet those demands with food variety. Now, as a general rule, like as we go, it's like try to get 4 cups a day of vegetables, fruits, so vegetables and salads from 5 or more different colors. Try your best to, where you can, eat them in different ways when you cook them. So some things where you can eat them raw, some things eat them semi-cooked, some things eat them cooked. So I'm not saying go and eat broccoli raw. It's like I said, where applicable, like eat some things that you can eat raw, eat some things where you can eat them cooked, semi-cooked, those kind of things, and have like 2 pieces of fruit a day. Like if you do those things, you eat a wide variety of other foods, dairy, you're a meat eater, you eat a wide variety of lean meats and seafood and those kind of things, you're going to be ticking the boxes very, very, very easily. If you're a vegetarian, you would need to be a little bit more knowledgeable on like what foods you're getting in the diet, just so you can tick the boxes. It's just like you're restricting food groups. It's just going to be a little bit more challenging. Scale it down. Dare I say the V word? If you are a vegan, it's like you just need to do your homework, right? You just need to look at what you're eating, what the requirements are. Can you get most of those things in the diet from food? If you can't get all of them, which some things you can't, you're going to need to supplement them. That's it. That's as far as we kind of go with that, without someone getting salty at me because I said the V word. So then once we look at those things, it's like we've pretty much got everything on lock. There's really nothing else that you guys need to know. We now need to look at the lifestyle component of it, or like the making nutrition work for you guys kind of thing. So this is when we talk about things like meal frequency. This is when we talk about things like when to eat based around your diet and based around your preferences. In terms of like meal frequency, there's no optimal meal frequency for most of the people on this podcast that are interested in like maximizing their body composition. We really just need to adhere to our protein turnover. Like we'll think about our protein turnover, which is the rate of breakdown and the rate of synthesis over the day. So protein is one of those things, is a very interesting nutrient. So we don't necessarily like store protein as fat, like it's almost impossible to do that. So what it essentially does is gets utilized for a certain period of time for whatever it needs to get utilized for. And what that can do in that period, if we eat an amount that's about 20 to 40 grams, is it'll actually increase our protein synthesis. So we're making protein. Once that mechanism lasts for about 3 hours, maybe 3 to 4 hours. And then after that, it's like protein synthesis will drop and protein breakdown is always happening. So if we're interested in having a protein synthesis rate that's greater than the protein breakdown rate, because the net amount at the end of the day is going to be the difference on whether you maintain your mass or you increase it or you lower it, we would want to have another serving of protein that's between 20 and 40 grams. Now, the reason why we say 20 to 40 is because there's good research that shows that 20 is the minimum threshold to trigger muscle protein synthesis. You get a greater amount of muscle protein synthesis that's slightly greater, not double the amount, just slightly greater at 40. So we just want to look at our protein requirements for the day and go, cool. Realistically, I probably need to eat every 3 to 4 hours. So it's roughly about 4 meals a day, sometimes 5, between 20 and 40 grams. Just make sure at a bare minimum it's 20. And you're doing your best to kind of keep your muscle protein synthesis rate above your breakdown if you're interested in your body composition and your performance and your recovery, because you got to think like your muscle protein breakdown rates are going to be greater if you train, because it's a byproduct of working out. We just want to make sure that we're doing our best at a bare minimum to do that. The rest of the stuff, it's like, in our opinion, peri-workout nutrition is important. Some carbohydrates before you train, some carbohydrates post-workout with your protein is good as well, because those things are going to support both performance and recovery. The rest of it, you can just eat when you feel like it.
Yeah, when we understand that stuff, like you can see how we start to debunk some of the myths or some of the methods that people might rely on, like, no carbs after 6, or eating smaller meals more frequently is going to be better for weight loss, or intermittent fasting is like the golden ticket to fat loss. And it's like, well, when we have an understanding of like how that actually works, we can start to question the validity of some of the things that we would see preached on the internet or wherever you might find it, because we now know what actually contributes to these things working, like, factually.
Yeah, people still get caught up in the like immediate consumption of energy. So the after 6 o'clock kind of thing. It's like if I eat after 6 o'clock because I'm not moving, it's that whole like movement for that expenditure for intake. So it doesn't necessarily work that way, because even when you're sleeping, you're expending an amount of energy. So you got to look at things over a 24-hour clock, over a 7-day clock as well, because it's not like, the stroke of midnight, your metabolic clock just, goes back to zero or something along those lines. Like, so that's the whole, like, I'm looking at my Fitbit trying to burn, 3,000 calories a day so that I can eat X amount. It's like, again, we're kind of chasing our tail with that mindset. So we need to look at things, again, just across the things that matter: energy balance, protein intake, macro and micronutrient compositions, and then make your meal frequencies work for you guys, based off your goals and just based off your lifestyle. Because we get it. Like, you're at work, you're not going to be able to eat, all the time. Tell your boss, like, hey, can't come to this meeting, can't take this conference call, can't take this really important kind of sales meeting or whatever I've got with this client because I need to eat.
A million.
Yeah, it's just like, it's not going to work. So we just have to make those situations work for that person. And this is where we kind of we can go a little bit off track here, but this is like where we go with this understanding of like optimal for the person. So that's probably the next layer after that. The next layer would be supplementation, which is filling the gaps. It's like, can't get my protein intake in. I'm sick of eating meat, sick of eating dairy, sick of eating this. It's too hard to kind of look at all these vegetarian options to mix the amino acid profiles to kind of get a decent enough kind of amino acid consumption for my diet. Cool. Supplement it. Don't really like seafood. Cool. Put some fish oil or some, other omegas supplements into your diet. Sweet. That's fine. Look for food options first. If you can't get them in for whatever reason, we supplement to fill the gaps, but that's pretty much it. And I think after that, it's like, making it optimal, making it work for the person, because that's really going to be the thing that leads to compliance. And compliance is the number one thing. We spoke about it already. It's like, follow the diet or it's flawed. So for someone who is a corporate individual, works a lot, even to someone, they run their own business, like this, anyone who can stick to a very rigid diet plan, a very, very rigid eating program, it doesn't matter. It's like, we just kind of go, right, well, let's look at the circumstances for you. This is going to be the best case scenario. And I'm sure that you've done that with numerous amounts of your clients.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess obviously we said it at the start, the compliance thing is the biggest and the most important thing, because if you can't stick to it, then it's redundant and it's not going to work for you. But I guess like having an understanding of how all of these things work individually and then like comprehensively when you put them all together kind of gives you the tools to be able to manipulate what you need to be able to make it work for you. And even like just know when to use certain methods or certain approaches at certain times, because something that works for you at one point might not work for you now. So it's like, all right, well, what do we need to change or what do we need to adapt? Could be meal timing, could be frequency, could be how much protein you're eating. But it's like knowing what like the metrics are that you're working with so that you can just adjust them like reasonably and not do like drastic shit that you don't need to be doing. Yeah.
And look, I get it. Some people we all want results yesterday. So we're going to do some drastic shit if we can to get the outcome. But I guess what was that?
Like at what cost though?
Yeah, well, I don't, like even look at the 10 best clients that you've got, the 10 most compliant clients that you have, and I'll look at the ones that I've worked with across, my career. Even this, like even 50, the top 50. It's like they're all this. Well, depends if you've got a definitive goal or not. So
depends if I check in or not.
Circumstances are very important when it comes to certain individuals. They need an endpoint.
Throw myself under the bus.
But if you look at those, if you trend the behaviors, even the characteristics of them, it's like they see they're playing the long game. I don't know how many women I've taken on that have been, 8-week challenge after 8-week challenge, extreme diet after extreme diet. And you have to sit there and reprogram their mindset to look to 12 months down the track. So it's like, that's why it's a really important question when we sit down with someone. It's like 12 months later, what do you look like? Yeah. What do you do? How do you perform? Those kind of things, because we need to scale everything back from that rather than looking 8 to 12 weeks ahead. Because 8 to 12 weeks ahead is just like 8 to 12 weeks of like desperation for most people. And it's like, I can push myself hard in that 8-week period, not learn anything along the way, and really not change the person who I am, but rather get myself to a point where I potentially break, put the weight back on, or, you know, lose all the progress that you did because you didn't really kind of learn how to implement these things into your life and have the power of knowledge to understand why things work and how to make them work for you, and just repeat the cycle again. You know, we never like to see people losing the same 5 kilos or 10 kilos across their lifestyle, their lifespan. Never like to see people just repeating the same goal too. It's just like, set a goal, achieve it, set a new goal, move on. That's the STCfit way. It's like we one goal is a stepping stone to another, which is a stepping stone to another. Now, all of the clients that we have that successfully manage their body composition and even just successfully achieve their goals, because sometimes managing their body composition isn't their goal. Yeah. Like, they all have the same mindset. Understand the bare minimum that they need to understand to get the goal done. Always ask lots of questions. Play the long game. Look into the future. Own their shit when they don't get the things that they're supposed to do done, but always have a plan to move forward and work on the things that need to be worked on. And it's like, if we can do those things, we're putting ourselves in the best position to get whatever we want to get.
If you guys want to see this in a little bit more detail, I'm pretty sure you can get access to the webinar through the website now as well. So that'll give you, just like we're talking about, a broader perspective and like looking at things over a time span. So that webinar in particular will take you through how to do that. And if you want to go one step like before that, you should probably start at the macro guide. So you'll be able to find the resource over on our website. So it'll take you through the amounts that we're working with and like macro distribution, how to figure out your own individual energy requirements, how to change that based off your goals, how to set your targets. Just because like that's obviously we've spoken about it as like the starting point. So you kind of can't do any of that stuff without, or any of the preceding stuff if you haven't got that right first. So I definitely recommend starting there, and then you can kind of jump onto the webinar and have a look at that too.
Yep, agreed.
Sweet. I would say that covers pretty much everything, doesn't it?
I think for today's message, it's obviously like we can go into the weeds on all this stuff. Like, we can get really, textbooky, and, we can kind of really break down every element that we've spoken about today. I think if we just look at like the biggest messages from today's, like, have an open mind when it comes to nutrition. Think about, where you get your where you get your information from. So it's not your friend's hairdresser's brother who, told you that this is what we should do to eat. It's like, you need to get really good information from the good places. And you need to go places that have, a little bit of authority, knowledge, not a little bit, a lot. Authority, knowledge, experience, results, the message is consistent, those kind of things. Magazines and stuff and things on the internet, articles on the internet aren't going to be the best place for you guys to, obtain this information, because they're working on isolated mechanisms in a bigger picture. So it's no different to saying like, it's the fat loss increases your insulin, and that, will reduce the amount of like fat burning capacity that you have. And that's true, but it does it for the time that you've got the food in the system. And then after that, what happens? It goes back to, using whatever it needs to for the supply itself with energy. And again, if we're working on this energy in, energy out over a day, it's like, it doesn't really matter like when you eat and what you eat in that period, because it's calorie dependent and macronutrient dependent and goal dependent and activity dependent. So you see how if you can read an article and it tells you to eat this food and avoid this food because of this, it's like, that's not great information. It's like, that's starting to form a bias in your mind of something that's actually bullshit. So be very, very mindful where you get your information from as well. And then, work off the things that matter. Like we spoke about, go to the macro guide, listen to the workshop if you guys really want to kind of gain control and power over the decisions you make and what you eat. learn how to make it incorporate into your social life and stuff and give yourself some flexibility, but also understand that at times your goals are going to permit a degree of compliance. So you can't have your cake and eat it too. So you can't go out on the weekends, getting lit, drinking as much as you like and starving yourselves for the calories and stuff just to kind of make that work. It's like, it can happen acutely, but it's like to get the goals that you want, there's behaviors and actions that need to be met on a daily and weekly basis to get that outcome. And it's like the person that you want, the person who has the goals that you want isn't doing that. So it's like, always think about that as well. It's like, who's the person that I need to be? What do I need to do to have the outcome? So it's like be, do, have.
Yeah. A really good starting point, a simple starting point where you can start to question some of the things that you're seeing and just make better decisions.
Yeah. And have a circle to ask questions.
So
it's like, throw it in the DMs for us. Like we're all about helping people. Like, we're, 1 million positive outcomes through health and fitness by 2030. It's like, we're here to answer those questions. Like if we weren't, that wouldn't be our mission as a business. So, find yourselves a circle to ask those questions and clarify things. Like I've got a great circle and we talk about really cool, fascinating stuff. And sometimes we're right and sometimes we're wrong, but it's good to kind of just go to an area and have the ability to throw things up in the air and have some discussion about it, so that we don't get confused on things. So yeah, definitely find a support network to do that.
Yeah. So like I said, macro guide, webinar, More Than Macros article. Mm-hmm. If you do need a bit of accountability or support around this, you can shoot us a DM over on the STCfit Instagram. Our team of online coaches have got some places available. So if you do need some help, just reach out and I will be in touch with you. Other than that, if you enjoyed this episode, hopefully you guys have managed to take something away, simplified things for you, and you can see things through a broader perspective. Print screen episode, share it on your stories and give us a tag. So I'm Nat at Nat Jurek STCfit. You are, I don't know it again.
Jason Galea _STC.
I feel like we all just need to get a uniform one so I don't fuck it up every week.
I just have too many letters in my name. I don't like calling myself Jace. I don't like calling myself Jace. Like you can call yourself Nat. Like Jace is like
weird.
Like either my mum calls me Jace or my friends, and that's it. It's like it's a weird, I don't know.
It's funny because I'm like, no one fucking call me Natalie because I'm like getting the wooden spoon if that happens.
Yeah, I don't like Jace. I don't like it. It's just not a thing.
Really?
Yeah, no, I don't like it. It's just like I feel like I'm 12.
All right, 3 years later, I'm gonna start calling you Jason now.
Call me anything but Jace.
All right, well, we will leave it there, and we'll catch you guys in a fortnight.
That was fun. Hope you enjoyed that, guys. Speak to you soon. Bye.